Hello, I'm Alise Chaffins, and I'm here today with co-directors Daniel Junge and Sam Pollard, along with producer Wellington Love, to speak about their documentary, I Was Born This Way, which recently had its premiere at Tribeca. Thank you all so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. Can you tell me just a little bit about how you discovered Archbishop Carl Bean's story?
Sure, that started with me. I was researching a series on protest music, social action and music, and sex was one of the topics. And when I think of sex and gender, immediately what comes to mind for me is Lady Gaga's Born This Way. That was going to be the anchor story. And in researching her story, I found Carl Bean. I found out that her song was actually an homage to an earlier song and an homage to the man who sang that song. And turns out that he left Motown to become an activist and start a church. That's a great story. Well, that series never happened, but that story stuck with me. And then I realized that I was living in LA and that his church and come to find out his house were within miles of where I was living. So, when I reached out to him, within weeks we were shooting. It was just before COVID shut the world down. We thankfully got, 2 days of interview, which is the bedrock of the film with him. And shortly thereafter, within a year, I had these two gentlemen join me. I've worked with Sam before. He was a consulting producer on HBO film of mine, and Wellington came through a mutual friend, came on as producer.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah. It feels like such an important film to have premiered not just during Pride Month, but specifically this year, just with everything kind of happening. Can you just talk a little bit about that? Like, kind of the feeling of that happening now?
I think the fact that here's a story about a man who had so lots of trials and tribulations, but had a level of spirituality that was probably with him his whole life, even when he wasn't aware of it. And the optimism and the sense of spirituality that he had is what makes him so special. I had never heard of this song, even though I was a big Motown person when I was in my teens, in my early 20s. So hearing this song, learning about Carl Bean when Daniel reached out to me about 5 years ago and sent me the interviews that he did, an assembly of the interview that he had done with Carl, I said to myself, wow, this is a special, special human being. And quite honestly, in these times we're living in today, his story is even more special. With the sort of fractalization and the anger that exists in this country and in other places around the world, to have such a, uplifting story makes me feel wonderful. I was saying to a friend last night, when I watch a lot of television, and all the TV I watch, there's such negativity, and there's such a sense that evil wins out.
Mhm.
And when you watch this film, you realize that evil doesn't win out. When you watch it, Carl Bean's story and his sense of faith and his sense of spirituality.
Yeah, no, if I could just add to that, I was this black gay kid growing up in Jacksonville, Florida. I remember in high school, hearing the first news reports about GRID, gay-related immune deficiency, and like as a 15-year-old thinking, oh my God, I'm gonna get this disease just because I'm gay, and I came of age in New York during the height of the AIDS crisis.
Mhm.
And I thought of myself as this kind of like, sophisticated, groovy kid who was like, an activist involved in ACT UP, but I didn't know anything about Carl Bean. And I think about what it might have been like to know about Carl and what he was doing as a teenager. I think about, my God, we thought we were the only, not the only ones, but we were one of the few on the front lines, and this man was doing all this incredible work just a few thousand miles away, sort of exactly sort of parallel to the time. And I think people need to know about that. Kids today need to know about it. So many of my friends who were at the screening last night, who were again part of this movement in the mid late 80s in New York, they didn't know anything about it. And these are like, well-educated, literate people who know history, So I think younger generations need to know, today's people need to know, and we need, as you said, we need to know more than ever because we are living in this time where so much erasure is happening, so much, we're being pitted against each other, and we just need to be reminded not only about the sort of the humanity of our fellow human beings, but also that we have to keep pushing forward, that progressivism is not, you just have to keep making progress. So I think that that's what Carl knew in his core. He never stopped. And he says in the film, if I had to do it all over again, if I don't want to, it's not a spoiler, but if I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't change a thing. And you know that, you feel that, when you see him and hear him.
Yeah, I think one of the things that really moved me as I was watching this film is just that it's this intersection of like blackness and queerness and faith and music and activism. Can you just talk a little bit about navigating these topics and just putting them together in just a really artful and beautiful, meaningful way?
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And hopefully some of that seamlessness is a tribute to our work as filmmakers, but that's not to say that those overlaps happen without frictions. And hopefully the film also indicates that whenever there's a people fighting for rights and those things overlap, there's a clashing of rights too. And so we're very clear in the film that there was homophobia within the black church, and there was racism within the LGBTQ community, and that those things needed to be overcome. And Carl, in a way, was a salve. He was a guy who helped overcome those divisions.
Hmm. Yeah. Oh, one of the other things, it's just impressive how many celebrities you were able to like assemble for this documentary. Can you talk about the process of gathering them?
Yeah, well, it's a process of discovery for all of us. I think Lady Gaga actually knew more about him than a lot of us, because because Born This Way was an homage to him. I'll let Sam speak a little bit about this, but I'll say we've done our share of celebrity docs. There's a lot of celebrity docs out there. This is a film celebrating a heretofore yet to be celebrated individual, but the celebrities in it are there as an access point. Hopefully, we hope it as a sales point as well. But in reality, we thought that they were servicing his story by telling their story, but what they came, all of them, with a deep reverence for him and talking about how he had affected them, which was really powerful for us.
And one of the things that's always sort of important when you're trying to do a film, you're trying to bring on a celebrity like a Billy Porter, like a Questlove. You want to make sure that they just don't sort of pop in and give you a one or two bites and say, "Oh, we got them in the film."
Yeah.
They really spoke to how much they cared about Carl, how much they cared about what he was all about in terms of what he meant to his community, to our community. And that's what makes it unique to me. And Daniel's right. I've done a lot of films where I've brought some celebrities in because I knew I had to have somebody that would say, "Oh, you got Bill Clinton. Oh, you got Barack Obama." You don't feel like that with this film.
Mm-mm.
You don't feel like, "Oh, you got Billy Porter. Oh, you got Questlove." They 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 really feel very natural within the unfolding narrative, and that really speaks to the fact that Carl touched them,
Yeah.
and he was very important to them, and his music was, and they
Yeah.
got it, they understood it.
And our genius as filmmakers,
Well, that
unparalleled.
goes
Naturally.
without saying.
Of course, yeah. But just as we kind of wrap up here, what would be kind of the takeaway that you would want audiences to feel after, watching this film?
Good, boys.
No, I mean, I just, we've touched on this earlier, but I think we have to be reminded of our humanity. We have to be reminded that we still have power even in the face of, you know, I mean, I hate to say it, in the face of, sort of rising fascism,
Yeah.
in our country. And we have to know that the fight has to continue. It's real, and that we need each other, and that love and compassion are priceless. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you all for joining me. I really appreciate it. This is a beautiful and powerful film, and yeah, I'm excited for more people to see it.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for your interest.
Absolutely.
Okay.